Well, the House of Commons in the UK Parliament descended into chaos during a Gaza ceasefire debate as the House Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, departed from parliamentary convention and is now under pressure to quit. This comes as Prince William also weighed in against all protocols, following the outrageous example of his father, to wade into a political debate and came in calling for a ceasefire in Gaza, complaining about too many deaths, etc. Well, here to tell us more about what is happening in the UK, Esther Krakue. Great to see you, Esther, as always. Let's kick off with Prince William. I mean, we spoke earlier about King Charles and his climate change activism. That was a few months ago. Now you've got Prince William wading in like no monarch has ever done, expressing political points of view on a foreign policy issue. What's been the reaction in the UK there, Esther?
So Prince William released a statement after a visit to the British Red Cross in London, asking for effectively a humanitarian pause. He didn't use the word ceasefire because that would have been tone deaf, and there would have been many questions arising, like, you know, if Hamas is not going to pause, why should we? So he effectively called for the release of the hostages, but also a pause so that humanitarian aid can get into Gaza. Now, he did try and be balanced in his letter. However, that does raise the question of what kind of king will he be, future king, but also whose footsteps is he walking in as the Prince of Wales? Clearly his father's, because his father as the Prince of Wales was known for his environmental activism. He was very vocal about his political beliefs, and he wasn't afraid to ruffle some feathers in a way that was very much unlike the Queen. But he seemed to have gotten away with it, because now that he is king, he has decided to jettison all of that. He didn't attend COP27. He's been quite mute on political issues, which some will say, what's the point? Because we already know what he thinks. But at the end of the day, as the monarch, it would be improper for him to comment on political issues. I think Prince William is trying to use his position as the Prince of Wales to kind of emulate his father's stance in a way. Now, Prince William did get approval from the government to release that statement. I think that's probably why it was as neutral as it can get on this. But it is more about the precedent that it sets. Of course, you know, the Israel-Gaza
but Esther,
very
James?
But Esther, I want to get into what some of the lead up to this, or some of the stuff that's been happening in the last 24, 48 hours, because I think Australians aren't fully across just what has been happening, too, in the House of Commons, and that explain to us how procedures for voting on a motion around Gaza and a ceasefire were changed and suspended by the House Speaker simply because Labour MPs were under physical threat from Islamist protesters. And you've essentially given, it sounds like to me, Islamist demonstrators the freedom to decide what's voted on, what's not voted on, how it's voted on in Parliament. What is happening here?
I mean, the last 72 hours in the UK's Parliament has been the kind of stuff you can't make up, actually. You couldn't even make up in a series because it's so ludicrous. So this giant virtue signaling exercise over the votes in Gaza, which is precisely what it is. It's not like the vote in Gaza is going to have any impact on actions there. You know, we can't vote on Australian taxes. Why do you think you can vote on what happens in Israel and Gaza? But anyway, there were pro-Palestinian protesters outside of Parliament just when the vote was about to happen. And Sir Keir Starmer pulled Lindsay Hoyle aside and had some words with him. Now, we don't know what exactly that conversation entailed. Some are saying that Keir Starmer actually threatened the Commons Speaker to actually get rid of him at the next election when Labour are expected to win if he didn't back Labour's amendment motion. So ordinarily the SNP, the third largest opposition party, third largest party in Parliament, but the second largest opposition, had come up with a motion to debate. And parliamentary procedure wouldn't actually have you debate an amendment proposed by Labour, who are also in the opposition, when the government has also proposed its own its own amendment. So basically, Sir Lindsay Hoyle effectively defected from parliamentary procedure after having a conversation with Sir Keir Starmer, and it all just kind of erupted in the Commons. You know, Tory MPs left, the SNP MPs left as well, and which begs a couple of questions. Why does it seem like our politicians are being allowed to be intimidated by pro-Palestinian protesters. We already know that some MPs, an MP who was the MP for Finchley and Golders Green for, I believe, over a decade, had to resign because of threats against his life. Right? We all across the board, we're seeing intimidation of MPs, particularly when it comes to this vote, which is largely ceremonial, completely meaningless, and also begs the question why our MPs are so incensed and getting so worked up over something that's happening not in Britain, but they don't seem as incensed as people being homeless, or the economy tanking, or the housing crisis, or the crumbling NHS, or all the things that affect the daily lives of British citizens, even more so. It's really a complete fiasco. You just couldn't make it up. And I think for me, the saddest thing is, just seeing how MPs are being intimidated by this hate mob, effectively.